Hey guys, tonight we're descending into a place that even your worst Airbnb can't quite match: a medieval prison. You're about to spend a full day locked away beneath a crumbling castle, surrounded by the kind of company that never brushes their teeth. It's going to be dark, damp, full of smells you'll never forget, and sounds that keep you guessing. And you probably won't survive this. Sorry. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Midnight in Manchester? 2 a.m. in Manila? I'm always curious. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up coughing. Your throat is dry, the air thick with dust, dampness, and something far less poetic. Beneath your cheek, the straw is half rotten, scratchy, and suspiciously warm in spots that shouldn't be. You're lying on it, curled like a shrimp in the pitch-black belly of a prison cell that hasn't seen sunlight since before your grandmother's grandmother was born. Above you, the ceiling groans with the weight of something, maybe stone, maybe regret. A rat scuttles across your ankle and vanishes into the wall, like it's done this 1,000 times before. You jolt up, bad idea. Your head connects with the low, vaulted stone ceiling, and a tiny cascade of grit rains into your face. Congratulations, it's not even dawn, and you've already lost a hit point. You shuffle to your feet, or try to. The chain bolted to your ankle has different ideas. It's rusted, iron, and just long enough to let you reach one corner of your cell, a corner currently occupied by a puddle that may or may not be alive. Your tunic, once beige, or maybe blue, is now a grimy gray, stiff with whatever memories it's absorbed from this place. No shoes, naturally. Just the cold stone kissing your soles with every movement. Historians still argue whether medieval prisons were always underground, or if some poor souls got the penthouse suite, by which we mean any room with a window. Yours? No such luck. Just a slit in the wall, barely wider than a dagger blade, letting in a sigh of breeze and a wisp of morning mist. You stand there for a moment, blinking into the half-dark, listening to the soundscape, the creak of wood, the far-off clang of another prisoner somewhere, and the occasional groan that definitely wasn't yours. The medieval concept of prison wasn't really about doing time. It was more like a pause button, somewhere to hold you before your trial, or your torture, or your execution, or maybe until someone with money bailed you out. Spoiler, you have no money. You inch toward the wall and press your hand to the stone. It's slick with condensation. Tiny rivulets have carved lazy patterns into the surface, and your fingers come away wet and gritty. From the ceiling, a drip begins to tap out a slow, arrhythmic beat. It will continue endlessly, like a monk with a leaky drum. Your stomach rumbles. You vaguely remember dinner, or maybe breakfast, or maybe it was just a dream about apples. The hunger is dull now, not a sharp pain, but a dragging weight, like a wet blanket tied to your ribs. You try not to think about food. Instead, you think about escape, not a smart move. The door to your cell is made of wood, reinforced with iron, and it looks about as cooperative as a sleep-deprived mule. You give it a tentative push. It laughs at you, not literally, but spiritually. There's a bucket in the corner. Let's not talk about the bucket. Above you, another rat scurries across a wooden beam, pauses, and peers down at you with what feels like a smirk. He's been here longer. He knows the rules. You give him a nod of respect and sit back down on your straw mat, trying to shift away from the part that smells most strongly of cabbage and sorrow. There's a scratchy noise behind the wall. Not quite human, but too rhythmic to be random. Tapping. Scraping. You lean your ear against the stone. Silence. Then the scratching resumes. You decide to pretend it's a friendly ghost. You need all the allies you can get. As the minutes drag by, though time's slippery in this place, you try to remember how you got here. A tavern argument? A misplaced debt? Or maybe you just looked too confident in the marketplace. In medieval Europe, that could be a crime, especially if the local lord was in a bad mood or your shoes looked too fancy. A surprising fact: prisons weren't meant for rehabilitation back then. That idea wouldn't really take hold until centuries later. In your time, guilty was often decided before the gavel hit the wood. Here, you might wait days, weeks, or years for someone to remember you exist. There's no schedule, no lights to turn on or off. The day begins when the jailer decides it does. You lean your head back against the cold stone and listen again. Footsteps, 2 of them, heavy, deliberate, with the faint jingle of keys. You inhale. You're not ready. The door doesn't creak. It groans. Like an old man with a bad back being forced out of his favorite chair. And behind it, carrying the kind of presence you feel more than see, stands the jailer. He doesn't speak. Not yet. Just stares at you for a moment. His silhouette wide and lumpy, backlit by a distant torch. He's hunched, wrapped in something that might have once been a tunic, but now looks more like a tapestry of dried stains and questionable stitching. His face is partly shadowed, but you can make out the important bits. Nose like a broken boot, lips curled in permanent disdain, and exactly 2 teeth gleaming faintly like twin tombstones. Then the smell hits you. Forget the cell, forget the rat. The jailer smells like something that died, was resurrected out of spite, and then decided to bathe in turnip juice for good measure. You step back without meaning to. He notices, of course he does. He lumbers forward and drops something into your cell with a wet plop. A wooden bowl, wide and shallow, full of something. It's beige, it's lumpy, it jiggles in ways food really shouldn't. There's a chunk of bread perched on the rim, or maybe it's just a large crouton that lost its will to live. Eat, he says. 1 syllable. Delivered with the kind of menace usually reserved for Bond villains and disapproving grandmothers. He waits. You sit. The bowl steams faintly, releasing a bouquet of scents. Boiled oats, onion, and something tangy you really hope is vinegar. You lift the spoon, more of a carved splinter really, and stir. A bubble pops. You wince. And yet, you're hungry, very hungry. You take a bite. It's not awful. It's not great either. The porridge is cold around the edges, scalding in the middle, and contains a generous helping of grit, possibly sand, possibly eggshell, possibly ancient bone dust. The bread, meanwhile, is chewy in a way that suggests it once fought back. Still, this might be your only meal today, so you dig in. The jailer watches, arms crossed, like a cat monitoring a wounded bird. Then satisfied, or bored, he turns and disappears, leaving behind the unmistakable stench of wet wool and disdain. Mainstream history tells us that prison food in the Middle Ages was barely food. Most inmates received gruel, a slurry of whatever was cheap and available, often donated by local churches or the family of the prisoner. If you didn't have someone on the outside feeding you, well, you got what the rats didn't want. But here's a quirky tidbit. In some wealthier cities, prisoners were fed better than peasants. Monks, acting as wardens, sometimes insisted on humane treatment. In Milan, prisoners could request garlic soup. In London, If you were noble enough, you might even get roasted game. You're getting bottom-tier porridge with a side of moodiness. The bowl now empty, you glance around for somewhere to place it. There is no shelf, no table, just the floor. So you set it near the bucket, close enough to forget, far enough not to confuse. That smell, though, it clings. Not just the food, everything. Every pore of this prison sweats history, and none of it is pleasant. Mildew curls from the corners, feeding on stone and time. The straw mattress leaks a scent that suggests a long lineage of unfortunate tenants. And the air, oh the air, thick as wool, saturated with human sweat, old wounds, and dreams gone sour. Historians still argue whether medieval prison architects understood ventilation. Spoiler, they probably did not. Dungeons were built for containment, not comfort. Air shafts were minimal, often clogged. Some prison towers had narrow windows, but more for taunting than air circulation. You could see the world, you just couldn't breathe it. And then there's that smell. At first, you can't place it. It floats in on the edge of everything else. Light but sharp, like something burned long ago and never apologized. You lean toward the wall, nose wrinkling. It's coming from the corridor. Maybe a torch, maybe the kitchen. Or maybe someone new arrived. Shuffling footsteps echo. Wet coughing. A low moan that fades into silence. You sit perfectly still. Breath caught somewhere behind your teeth. The prison has a rhythm, a slow and terrible heart, and right now you can hear it beating just beyond the bars. Later, much later, the smell intensifies. A mix of smoke, tallow, and something oddly floral. Perfume? No. Impossible. But you have heard that in some medieval prisons, women were occasionally locked away. Noble women, heretics, widows who wouldn't marry the right man. In fact, there's an ongoing debate among scholars about how common mixed-gender incarceration was. Some evidence suggests it happened more often than we'd think, especially in smaller jails, where space was limited and morality took a back seat to logistics. Of course, the results were rarely wholesome. Your stomach growls again, confused and unsatisfied. You wipe your hands on your tunic, smearing grime across what little clean fabric remains, and shuffle back to your mat. The drip from the ceiling hasn't stopped. It seems louder now, more personal. Time slips. Was that an hour? 3? A full day? There's no sun to check, no clock to consult, just the gradual cooling of your bones and the slow ache settling into your back. You wonder briefly if this is it, if the jailer will return, or if you'll simply fade. People have. Many prisoners were forgotten entirely, their bodies only discovered when the next tenant arrived and noticed a suspiciously full pile of straw. A rat climbs across your foot. You don't move. It's already shaping up to be a very long day. You hear it before you see it. The faint rustle of straw, the rhythmic chitter of tiny claws, the unmistakable high-pitched squeak of something with a tail and no respect for personal space. Rats. You are not alone in this cell, and no, we're not talking about metaphysical loneliness, the kind you might battle with a blanket burrito and a Taylor Swift playlist. This is the furry, scurrying, deeply unsanitary kind of not alone. They're everywhere. One dashes across your ankle, tail flicking like a whip. Another perches on a beam overhead, staring down with those shiny, unblinking eyes that radiate both curiosity and mild contempt. It's not scared of you. Why would it be? You're the guest here. They live here. Historians agree that medieval prisons were infested with vermin. In fact, some even describe prisoners sleeping with rags tied around their heads, not for warmth, but to prevent rats from chewing on their ears while they slept. Not a bedtime tip you'll find in a Martha Stewart column. You huddle back against the damp wall, trying to count how many of them there are. 5, 10, more. It's like trying to count the raisins in a loaf of plague-era fruitcake. They're quick, they're quiet, and they're surprisingly confident. And then from the shadows comes a voice. Don't bother naming them. They don't listen anyway. You freeze. There, in the far corner of your cell, one you were pretty sure was empty, someone shifts beneath a ragged blanket. He's older than you, or maybe just more battered by time. His hair is patchy, his beard a tangled mat of gray. His eyes, though, are sharp, alive, friendly, in that way where you can't tell if someone's about to hug you or sell you for soup ingredients. The name's Hugh, he says, sticking out a grubby hand. Hugh the Lucky, which, considering I'm still breathing, ain't entirely wrong. You shake his hand. It's warm, somehow. Dry, which is suspicious in its own way. He gestures to the rats. They'll steal your food, gnaw your toes, and sleep in your boots, assuming you ever get boots again. But don't kick 'em. They bring news. You blink. News? He winks. Oh, sure. They come and go. From the kitchens, from other cells. Some of them even scamper out during the night and back again. You watch where they run and what they're carrying, and you'll learn more than you would from any priest. And just like that, you realize your prison cell has a tiny, twitchy gossip network. Hugh scoots closer, dragging his straw like a turtle dragging its shell. You in for something noble or stupid? You admit you're not sure. That's usually the case, he chuckles. Me, I was caught stealing apples from a noble's orchard at night during a famine while wearing his stolen cloak and using his horse. You stare. What? He shrugs. It was a very good horse. One of the rats scampers over and climbs onto Hugh's knee. He scratches it behind the ears like it's a kitten. This one's Buttercup, he says. She's the smart one. Brought me a button once. You don't have the heart to ask why he needed a button. Here's a weird historical tidbit for your midnight mind. In some medieval jails, prisoners adopted animals, cats, birds, even rodents. Pets gave structure to the otherwise formless time and provided a tiny illusion of control. In Paris, a 14th century prisoner famously trained a mouse to run an obstacle course made of spoons. That mouse was reportedly better fed than its owner. Hugh leans closer, voice low. Want to hear a secret? You nod. What else is there to do? This place, it changes people. Not just in the, oh no, I've lost my teeth way, in the head. Time doesn't work right down here. The rats, they start to make sense after a while. The walls talk. The shadows move. You laugh nervously. Then you realize he isn't laughing. Sleep with one eye open, he murmurs. And if someone knocks on the wall 3 times, knock back only twice. Historians still argue whether these stories of haunted prisons and cursed cells were exaggerations, stress-induced hallucinations, or part of a broader oral tradition designed to warn and unsettle. But some were so persistent, they made it into official court records, like the 13th century German jail, where a priest swore he saw chains moving by themselves and the faint image of a woman hanging in midair. He later blamed spoiled cheese. Back in your cell, Hugh settles onto his mat. The rats scatter, only to return moments later with some new scrap, something shiny, something soft. He whistles to Buttercup and curls up beneath his blanket. You lie back down, straw scratching your neck, the chain around your ankle clinking gently like a lullaby in reverse. It's quieter now. The rats have gone still. Even the drip above your head has softened into a whisper. You start to drift. And then you hear it. 3 knocks. From the other side of the wall. You freeze. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. From the wall just behind where your straw mat ends. Hugh, already half asleep, exhales sharply and rolls over, muttering something that sounds like, "Not tonight, Martha." You wait, breath shallow. Nothing. You press your ear to the cold stone. It hums faintly, with the same ambient dread that seems to permeate everything down here. Was it your imagination? Was the prison settling? Was it Martha? And then, just as you start convincing yourself it was nothing, thump! Something heavy lands outside your cell. The jailer is back. He doesn't say a word this time. Just slides something under the door with the grace of a brick being shoved through a letterbox. It's another bowl, smaller, different shape, and beside it something shocking. A flask, wooden with a cork. You inch forward. Hugh makes a noise like a rusty hinge and sits up. "Well now," he grins. "Must be your lucky day. Or someone's making a mistake." You pick up the bowl and peer inside. It's not porridge. It's meat, kind of. A single hunk, floating in a thin, greasy broth. It's pale, stringy, and suspiciously boneless. Possibly pigeon, more likely rat. Still, it smells like heaven, if heaven had low hygiene standards and a fondness for roadkill. You take a cautious bite. It's chewy, oversalted, but undeniably nourishing. You chew slower, savoring the novelty of actual flavor. Then you uncork the flask. Water. Cool, slightly metallic, but clean. "This," Hugh declares, "is fine dining. The good stuff means they're planning something." You pause mid-swallow. "What kind of something?" "Trial," he says, eyes darkening. "Or torture. Or a noble's birthday. They like to clean up the prisoners for show." Lovely. Historically, prisoners about to be executed or interrogated were sometimes fed better meals the night before. Not out of mercy, but so they'd have the strength to scream longer or stand upright in front of a crowd. Medieval hospitality. The gift that keeps on giving. Your stomach, however, is not in the mood for existential analysis. It's been growling like a sick dog all day, and now it's finally quiet. You finish the broth, tipping the bowl to sip the last salty drops, then wipe your mouth on your sleeve. Hygiene is now a theoretical concept. As the fullness settles in, you lean back against the wall. Your eyes drift shut for a moment. Then another sound jerks you upright. Clink. Chains, not yours. From the hall, a low voice mutters something unintelligible. Then footsteps. Shuffling, scraping. And a high-pitched giggle that doesn't belong in any prison you'd willingly spend time in. You press your back tighter to the stone. Hugh is listening too, his face oddly blank. "They're bringing someone in," he mutters. And they are. The door down the corridor groans open, then slams shut with the finality of a dungeon door that knows its purpose. The new prisoner's voice rises in a wail, not words, just raw sound, desperation. Then it cuts off, like someone smothered it. Hugh sighs. That one won't last the night. You sit in silence, your stomach oddly queasy again. To distract yourself, you look down at the empty bowl and flask. Funny. How grateful you can feel for lukewarm mystery meat when your expectations are so low. And of course, you start wondering, what if this was a mistake? What if that meal was meant for someone else? What if tomorrow they come for you with hot tongs and a mild apology? Here's a strange but true tidbit. Some medieval prisons had a designated taster, a prisoner chosen to sample food before others to check for poison. It was a dubious honor, but better than being forgotten entirely. You shift uncomfortably, the iron ring at your ankle pinching skin that's already rubbed raw. The broth was good, yes, but it hasn't cured the rest of your reality. The walls still weep, the rats still lurk, and there's a new prisoner sobbing just a few cells down. You glance at Hugh. He's scratching Buttercup behind the ears, calm as anything. How do you stay so okay? You ask. He grins. Well, I talk to the rats. I nap twice a day. And every now and then, I tell myself I'm just visiting. And that works? He shrugs. Not really. But it's either that or go full Martha. You decide not to ask again about Martha. You lie back down, head resting on the less moldy edge of your straw mat. Your stomach is full, your mind not quiet, but slowing. The jailer has vanished again. The corridor is mostly silent, and then softly, from somewhere in the dark, 2 knocks. You do not respond. Morning, or at least what passes for it in this stone and shadows abyss, begins with the unmistakable jangle of keys. Not the cheery kind that suggests freedom. No. These clink like a warning bell that someone's day, probably yours, is about to get worse. The jailer returns, chewing something that crunches wetly. You don't ask what it is. You don't want to know. His mouth is open as usual, not from speech, but from laziness. You notice the 2 teeth again, stalwart companions in a landscape of gum and contempt. He shuffles to your door and squints inside, like you're a strange fungus he meant to scrape off but forgot. Then he spits, not at you, just in your general direction. A gentle greeting in jailer speak. Get up. You try. Chain drags. Bones protest. Head spins. You slept, maybe. Maybe you just hallucinated lying down. Either way, your joints feel like they've rusted. Hugh, ever the gentleman, makes no move to rise. He just waves. Don't let him bite, he whispers. The jailer unlocks your door with the kind of care a butcher shows a stubborn drawer. He grabs your arm. Not hard, but firm. His hands are calloused and damp, like uncooked dough wearing sandpaper gloves. You're yanked into the corridor. It's darker than your cell somehow. The torchlight flickers, casting shadows that lurch and snarl on the stone walls. You pass other doors, some quiet, some not. One has scratching sounds. One smells like boiled cabbage and tears. One emits a low, guttural chanting you're certain no church ever approved. Your destination. The jailer doesn't say, he doesn't need to. You arrive at a chamber that might once have been a pantry. Now it's the interview room. Except here, interview means a lot less coffee and a lot more psychological trauma. There's a table, a bench, a single chair, backless, splintered, and bolted to the floor. The jailer gestures. You sit. Enter Sir Oswin. He's not a knight, but he might be a clerk. Robes too clean for this place. Fingers pale and smooth, unworked. Eyes sharp, like he's always deciding whether to burn a document or use it to ruin someone's life. Prisoner, he says, state your crime. You blink. He sighs. We'll call it general misbehavior. He pulls out a parchment. Your name is written wrong, of course. Your alleged crimes include disrespect, irreverence, and excessive cheek. You try to ask a question. He waves it off. The jailer says you didn't cry last night. That's suspicious. You begin to protest, but he raises one hand. Your behavior will be further assessed after lunch. Lunch? That's optimistic. Then he nods at something behind you. You don't turn fast enough. Thwack. A bucket of cold water drenches you, from crown to toes. Your tunic clings like wet seaweed. The chill burrows into your bones, dragging out every ounce of warmth you earned from last night's greasy broth. Sir Oswin nods, satisfied. That'll teach you to appear ungrateful. You're escorted back to your cell, dripping. Hugh looks up and offers a slow clap. Congratulations, you're now one of them. One of who? You ask through chattering teeth. The damp. We live longer. Historically, medieval prison keepers were not required to be literate, merciful, or particularly hygienic. Gaolers often ran their cells like private kingdoms, charging fees for everything from clean straw to extra water. Some even rented out shackles. Yes, you paid to be chained. Sir Oswin, or whatever his name actually is, represents another tier of torture: bureaucracy. Medieval record-keeping was laughably inaccurate, but terrifyingly permanent. Once something was on parchment, it might as well have been carved in granite. Didn't matter if it was true. It existed. Therefore, it was. And trials? That's rich. If you got one, it was usually a formality. Many verdicts were predetermined by status, wealth, or how grumpy the judge felt that morning. Evidence was optional. Bribery was encouraged. Justice as a concept was still in its trial phase. But let's return to the present, where you're soaked, shivering, and currently debating whether sitting in your own warmth is worth the shame. Buttercup climbs onto your knee again. Apparently you're salty now. Hugh tosses you a rag. It's only slightly damp and only mildly haunted. Use that, he says. Dry off best you can. They'll come again after second bell. What's second bell? He points to the dripping ceiling. When that slows down, comforting. You lean against the wall, clutching the rag, letting the tremors pass through your muscles like reluctant guests. The cold is a clingy friend. It settles in your joints, curls behind your ears, settles between your toes like a particularly malicious cat. The corridor groans again. Far off, someone laughs, a maniacal, high-pitched giggle, probably not Martha. You're not supposed to see it. That's clear from the way the jailer tries to block your view with his bulk as you're shuffled past the side corridor. But his stomach only covers so much ground, and you manage a glance. You wish you hadn't. At the end of the hallway is a chamber, larger than the others, better lit, with torches that flicker like they're a little too happy about where they are. Inside, a collection of implements rests on a table that's too clean and too central. There's a chair. Not the kind you'd find in a dining room, unless you were dining in a dungeon-themed fever dream. This one has straps and spikes. Welcome to the tools room. Your escort doesn't stop, you're marched on. But the image is burned into your eyelids now. Leather thongs stained a color you can't name. Iron tools with delicate curls, hooks, and screws. Some look like dentist instruments if the dentist hated everyone. Some just look like medieval nightmares given metal form. Back in your cell, Hugh raises an eyebrow. Ah, you saw it. You nod. He nods back. They used to show it to everyone. Then someone died of fright, not in the way they like. You've been in there? You ask. He smiles with a very particular weariness. Once. But I sang them a song. They found it amusing. I was only stretched a bit. You're not sure what part of that statement is most alarming. Historians today still debate the frequency and purpose of medieval torture tools. Were they used regularly, or mostly as theater to frighten prisoners into confession? Some records suggest elaborate devices were displayed as threats more than used in practice. Others list inventory logs: 1 rack, 3 pairs of thumb screws, 2 iron maidens. Like someone was running a sadistic hardware store. And yes, there really was a thing called the rack. You've heard the name. Maybe in a movie, maybe from a history teacher with a flair for drama. But to see one in person, or almost see it, is another matter. Long wooden frame, rotating spindles, cranking a body slowly, deliberately, to lengths it was never meant to reach. 1 inch, then another, then another. You shiver, and not just from the damp tunic still clinging to your spine. The spikes on the chair, those might have been part of the infamous Judas cradle. Then again, They might belong to the iron chair, another piece of inventive unkindness. Many of these devices, historians believe, weren't widely used until later centuries, or were exaggerated by later writers for flair. But even so, versions existed. And your jail is the type of place that collects versions. The real torture, Hugh says, is uncertainty. Sometimes they just say they're bringing you in. They don't. But then, the whole night you're waiting. You see the door open in your mind 1,000 times. You imagine every creak of leather, and when they don't come, you think it's worse. You realize he's not trying to scare you. He's trying to prepare you. You glance up at the ceiling. The drip has picked up again. Rhythmic. Almost musical. You try not to assign it lyrics like squish, squish. Your bones go squish. But your brain is in a mood. A rat drags something into the room. It's a button. Buttercup squeaks with triumph. You try to find comfort in this small victory. The rat still believes in trinkets. The world, for now, still contains objects like buttons. Maybe that means not everything has gone dark. Later, the jailer returns. Just stands outside the door this time, watching. As if calculating your size, your silence, your potential for screams. Hugh throws something at him. A pebble, maybe? Or dried porridge. Oi, he grumbles. You're ruining our quiet time. The jailer grunts and wanders off. A minute later, you hear another door open. A thud. Then a scream. Short, cut off. You and Hugh don't say anything for a while. To pass time, he teaches you a game called Bone or Stone, where you guess which bits in the straw are former rodents and which are just unlucky gravel. It's not as fun as it sounds, which is impressive, since it doesn't sound fun at all. You lie back, watching shadows move along the wall. They flicker with the torchlight in a pattern that almost forms a person. Slender, bent, hair flowing like cobwebs. You blink, gone. Hugh, without opening his eyes, says, "Don't stare too long. She doesn't like that." You don't ask who she is. You just try to sleep, imagining the spikes, the straps, the smell of iron, and wondering which was worse, seeing them or not knowing when they'd be used. The drip becomes your new nemesis. It's not just water, it's insistence. A constant tap, tap, tap that drills into your skull, setting up camp in your thoughts and hammering away like a bored carpenter with eternity to spare. You try to count the drops. You try to ignore them. You try pressing a rag against the leak. But the stone just drinks the water and weeps it back out somewhere else. You're learning things, like the many tones of dripping. Some are light, playful plinks. Some are heavy, almost theatrical splats. One even echoes like a slow clap from a ghost that disapproves of your posture. Hugh is unaffected, somehow. He's made peace with the drip. He says it tells him stories. Last week, he says, eyes closed, it told me about a monk who escaped this place by disguising himself as a goose. You blink. Don't laugh. The guard was half blind and very lonely. The drip lands on your forehead. Cold, sharp. You wipe it off and realize you're starting to name them. There's fast drip, angry drip, and big plop. They are, as of now, the most reliable companionship you have. Congratulations. Historians debate whether prisoners in medieval dungeons went mad from isolation, damp, or both. Modern experiments show that prolonged exposure to irregular, repetitive sounds like, say, dripping, can disrupt sleep cycles, cognitive patterns, and even induce hallucinations. And let's not even start on what it does to morale. Meanwhile, your mat is still damp from your morning rinse. The straw has embraced mildew as a lifestyle choice, and the stone beneath it is colder than betrayal. You try sitting against the wall again, but guess what? The drip moved. Now it taps your shoulder. Rhythmically. Rudely. Like it's picking a fight. I think I'm losing it, you mutter. Hugh cracks one eye open. Takes longer than this to go mad. Right now you're just softening. You sigh, and then tap right on your neck. The cell has changed since you arrived. Or maybe you have. The shadows seem longer. The walls seem closer. And the smell? You swear it's evolved. There's now a hint of boiled onion and betrayal. The rats, at least, seem satisfied. Buttercup returns with a soggy feather and presents it proudly. You say thank you. You mean it. Midway through the afternoon, or what you assume is afternoon, based on Hugh's snoring rhythm, you start hearing things. Whispers, just barely audible, curling in around the edges of the drip like moss, creeping into a window frame. You press your ear to the wall. Martha, someone hisses. Martha, I said the cheese was imaginary. You pull back. Maybe Hugh wasn't joking. The whispering fades. But now the drip is joined by a new friend, Scrape. Something dragging stone against stone. A bucket, a chain, a skeleton on holiday. Then silence again. You consider meditation, but all you remember is breathe deeply and clear your mind, which is difficult when your mind is currently trying to form a union against the working conditions. You lean your head back, watching the ceiling. The drip has stained the stone now, leaving a dark line like a tally mark. You start counting how many similar marks there are. 5, 10, 17. Each one probably left by someone just like you, trapped, waiting, listening. There's something profoundly oppressive about knowing you are one of many, and that all the ones before you left only stains, and maybe a few suspicious buttons. You stand. The chain clinks, a short leash with no give. You shuffle to the other wall, the one with the voices. Tap, tap, silence. This time, you knock first. Once, twice, then nothing. Then, 3 knocks back. You look at Hugh. He's watching now. That's new, he mutters. You back away from the wall, suddenly unsure. What did you just say in knock language? Was that hello or come eat me? You sit down. The drip resumes, centered now, targeting your thigh. Even the rats are quiet, which might be the most worrying part of all. You stretch out your legs, stare at the door, and listen to the soundscape of your new home. Water, scrapes, breathing. The occasional moan from a cell down the hall. Somewhere, a man is singing what might be a lullaby or a confession. It's in a language you don't understand, but the emotion is unmistakable. Regret. Hugh speaks again, voice low. When the drip moves to your face, you'll know it's almost time. Time for what? He shrugs. Depends. Could be food. Could be trial. Could be Martha. You're not sure if you're more afraid of trial or Martha at this point. Either way, the drip is moving. It starts with footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Not the plodding shuffle of the jailer this time, but something with more flair. More leather. Like someone wearing boots they paid extra for. You and Hugh both go quiet, the way mice freeze when the floorboard creaks. The door at the end of the corridor creaks open, and from it comes a voice, crisp and confident, with that smug polish that only comes from someone who's never had to sleep beside a chamber pot. Bring forth the accused, it calls. Oh, that's you. The jailer appears moments later, keys jangling, eyes gleaming like he really enjoys dragging people to their trial. He opens your door without a word. His grin does all the talking. You glance at Hugh. He gives a 2-finger salute. Don't accept any soup, he whispers, especially if they smile. You're yanked into the corridor again, this time without ceremony. The other cell doors stay shut, but behind them you hear breathing. One prisoner hums a lullaby. Another mutters a prayer in Latin. You don't know the words, but you understand the tone. It's the universal language of dread. You're led down a narrow flight of stairs, the stone steps worn into gentle curves by centuries of chained ankles. The air grows warmer. Not comforting warm, suspiciously warm. Like someone's been boiling water recently and forgot to turn off the menace. At the bottom is a chamber lit by 3 iron braziers. The flames hiss and spit, licking the air like they've got something to prove. And in the center of it all stands a priest in full ceremonial robes, a knight who looks like he's allergic to joy, and a scribe already scratching something onto a scroll with a quill that looks like it's been sharpened to a needle. Welcome to your trial. If you're expecting a jury of your peers, forget it. Medieval justice often took the form of trial by ordeal. The idea was simple. God would protect the innocent. The methods, less simple. You're shoved forward. The priest raises an eyebrow, either in concern or because the wax on his mustache is still drying. State your innocence, he says, and submit to divine judgment. You open your mouth, close it. This seems like a lose-lose. The knight steps forward, holding a cauldron of gently simmering water. Nearby is a smooth stone. Ah, so it's that kind of ordeal. Historians still debate how widespread the ordeal by boiling water truly was, but it's well documented in trial records from the 9th through 13th centuries. The accused would reach into scalding water to retrieve an object, often a stone or a ring. Then their hand was wrapped for 3 days. If it festered, you were guilty. If it didn't, congratulations. You were now both innocent and lightly poached. You stare at the cauldron. The steam curls toward you like curious fingers. The priest nods to the knight. Innocence will shield the flesh. You look back at the jailer. He grins. You look at the scribe. He's drawing a very unflattering profile of your nose. Then the knight gestures. You're to reach in. You pause. What would Hugh do? Probably sing a sea shanty. What would Buttercup do? Flee the country? But you steel yourself. Take a breath and plunge your hand into the boiling water. Well, have you ever tried touching a kettle when it's just finished boiling? Now imagine hugging it. Your hand meets the stone. You grab it. Pull it out. Your vision blurs, your ears ring. The pain is like lightning wrapped in vinegar and regret. But you don't scream, not once. The priest frowns, either impressed or disappointed. The knight inspects the hand, red, blistering, but intact. He grunts, "Wrap it." A bandage of cloth soaked in something that smells like moldy wine is slapped on. You're told to return in 3 days for the verdict. So much for instant justice. You're dragged back up the stairs, limbs trembling. Hugh sees you and whistles. "Oh ho, you boiled?" You nod, wincing as you cradle your hand. He leans closer. Did they offer the hot stone or the flaming tongs? You blink. There were options? He chuckles. Not really, but it helps to pretend. Here's a fun medieval tidbit to soothe your nerves. Some people deliberately injured themselves before the trial to make their wounds seem less severe after the ordeal. Others bribed the priests with coin or bread. The church eventually banned trial by ordeal in 1215, calling it unreliable. Which, yes, seems fair. You lie back on the straw, your hand pulsing with heat. The drip above your head seems quieter now. Either that, or the sound is drowned out by the thrum in your bones. The jailer passes once more, peering in at your bandage. Then, without a word, he tosses something through the bars. A peach, soft, bruised, but unmistakably a peach. You stare, then you laugh, because in this place, even a fruit feels like a miracle. You cradle the peach like it's made of gold and dreams. It's small, bruised, and probably older than your arrest warrant. but it's the softest thing you've touched in days, maybe weeks. The fuzz on the skin brushes against your fingers like a whisper from a world you barely remember. A world with sunlit markets and coin purses and people who didn't test your innocence by boiling your hand. You glance at Hugh. He raises an eyebrow. Luxury item, that. You must have made a friend. You snort. Pretty sure I screamed inside instead of outside. That counts for something. He leans over, squints at your hand. Looks like stew. Hope you're left-handed. You're not. The pain pulses with its own rhythm now, not quite in time with the drip. They've developed independent agendas, apparently. Your hand feels swollen, like it's planning to detach and start a solo career. And still, you have this peach. You bite it. It's mealy, sour, a bit fermented. You nearly cry. It's the best thing you've ever eaten. Now here's the cruel comedy of the medieval penal system. If you were rich, your prison experience was dramatically different. You might have your own cell, your own servant. Meals brought in from the outside, soft bedding, maybe even a feather pillow. Bail wasn't just a possibility, it was a currency. You, however, you got lucky with a peach. I once saw a baron's son get locked up, Hugh says suddenly. Had tapestries, a chessboard. Someone came in just to comb his hair. What did he do? Insulted the king's horse. Well, was it a nice horse? He shrugs. Not worth jail time. Hugh leans back and sighs. You know, they used to let nobles go on prison walks. Fresh air, sun, conversation. They said it helped their soul stay intact. You glance up at the ceiling. The soul here feels more like it's fermenting in a wine barrel with a rat in it. Your stomach, bolstered by the peach, lets out a noise that sounds like a negotiation. You ignore it. The jailer won't be back for hours or minutes. Time here is like Hugh's singing, unpredictable and vaguely threatening. The rats have returned. Buttercup is holding court near the wall, surrounded by younger rodents who seem very interested in the peach pit. You roll it toward them. She claims it like a queen. See? Hugh murmurs. Now you've bribed the monarchy. The mood is light, but the truth is heavy. If you were wealthy, you wouldn't be in this cell. You'd be up top. Maybe in a tower room. You'd send messages by pigeon. Eat stews laced with saffron. You might even get a trial with witnesses, not just a boiling pot and a judgmental priest. Historians continue to examine the disparity in medieval justice. Some courts held firm codes, like the Saxon weregild system, where fines replaced vengeance. But even those relied on a person's value. Nobles had higher weregilds than peasants. Your life was literally priced on a chart. Cheery stuff. The pain in your hand flares again. You shift, trying to rest it on a cleaner part of your straw mat. There isn't one. Across the cell, Hugh's humming a song that might be about onions. It has 17 verses. He's on verse 3. You lie back, staring at the stone ceiling. You notice, with vague concern, that the drip has changed again. It's slower now, heavier, like it's been thinking. The cell is quiet, peaceful even, if you squint your imagination. The kind of peace that only comes after your nerves have burned themselves out and left nothing but soft static behind. I was a stonemason, Hugh says suddenly. You turn your head. Before all this, built arches mostly, and stairs. You ever really think about stairs? Not often. Most folks don't. But every one of them's a promise, you know? A way up, a way down. He points to the door. Most people who come through there, they think it's a wall, but really it's just a stair going sideways. You stare at him. That's oddly profound. He grins. I hit my head last week. Might be a concussion. You both chuckle. Then silence again. Not the heavy, haunted silence of before, but something softer. A lull. A pause in the chaos. Maybe it's the peach. Maybe it's the blood loss. Maybe it's just fatigue doing its best impression of peace. You drift. A rat squeaks softly. Hugh hums. The drip keeps thinking. And somewhere beyond the bars, far up the corridor, a new prisoner is brought in. They scream. No one moves. It's the priest again. He comes in the morning, if you can call this lightless haze morning. And unlike the jailer, he doesn't grunt or spit or stare at you like he's guessing your weight in onions. No, the priest is worse. No, the priest, because he smiles. You hear his soft footsteps approach. No jingle of keys, no dragging chain. Just polished boots on damp stone and a faint rustle of robes that still somehow smell faintly of incense. And guilt. He stops at your cell, clears his throat in that way sanctimonious people do when they're about to say something utterly unhelpful. Good soul, he begins, which already feels like an exaggeration. How are we faring today? You open one eye, still in a cell. He nods, as if you've just confirmed his thesis on human suffering. Then the Lord is with you. He crouches, folding himself like a smug accordion. His face is lined, but not with worry, with certainty. The kind that only comes from someone who's never once feared the outcome of their own trial. I've come, he says, to offer comfort. You glance at your bandaged hand. Got any salve? No, he says brightly, but I have prayer. Of course you do. Now, let's be clear. Religion was the guiding force of medieval life. The church wasn't just your spiritual provider. It was your calendar, your doctor, your judge, and your news anchor. Monks transcribed medical texts, priests settled disputes, and bishops often wielded more power than kings. But in prison, that's where things got intense. Priests assigned to jails were often zealous to the point of fireworks. Many saw their role as shepherding souls to redemption, or at least scaring them halfway to heaven. The worse your crimes, the more enthusiastic the sermon. He opens his Bible and begins to read, slowly, deliberately, about judgment, about cleansing fire, about eternal weeping and gnashing of teeth. He does it in that sing-songy tone people use when they're secretly delighted you might end up crispy. Sin, he says, leaning in, is like mold on bread. It spreads unless you cut it off entirely. You eye your stale breakfast crust. Thanks for the metaphor. He continues without missing a beat. You know, many saints chose to imprison themselves. Voluntary seclusion for decades. You blink. They also weren't ankle chained to a rat colony. He chuckles as if you're the one being unreasonable. There's a kind of beauty in suffering, he says, gently reaching through the bars to touch your unburned hand. It cleanses. It prepares you for grace. The contact makes your skin crawl. You think of Hugh's advice. Don't accept soup, especially if they smile. The priest finishes his reading and closes the Bible with a reverent thud. The sound echoes ominously down the corridor, as if even the dungeon walls are exhausted by Leviticus. He hands you something, a tiny cross carved from bone. It was my father's, he lies, effortlessly. Let it remind you that redemption is always possible. You take it with 2 fingers. It's warm, too warm. Are you paid to come here? You ask. He tilts his head, in a way. But my reward is eternal. Of course it is. Here's a fringe historical tidbit. Some medieval priests genuinely volunteered for prison ministry. Others were assigned as penance. One famously wrote letters from his post, detailing inmates' slow descent into madness and his own increasing paranoia. Another claimed he heard angels crying in the walls. That manuscript was mysteriously lost. The priest finally stands. I shall return this evening, he announces. Perhaps we'll discuss confession then. Can I confess that I don't want to? He just smiles. You watch him walk away, robes trailing like smug curtains. He pauses at Hugh's cell and says something you don't catch. Hugh's reply includes a word that might rhyme with bell. When he's gone, the corridor feels emptier, not quieter, just drained, like someone opened a window and let out all the oxygen. You examine the bone cross. It's chipped. The edge is stained. You set it on the floor beside Buttercup, who sniffs it and moves on like a furry critic unimpressed by theology. Hugh smirks. You get the fire and brimstone treatment? Very much so. He stretches. Next time, ask him about the bishop, who got caught embezzling butter. Throws him right off. You lie back, hand throbbing, brain humming with verses you didn't ask for. You're tired, not just sleepy, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your ribs and makes your breath feel heavier than your bones. You curl on your side, back to the door, the cross still nearby, like a quiet threat or a tiny, hopeful lie. And for a moment, just one, you sleep, dreamless, blessedly so. You wake up to chewing, not your own, not Hugh's. It's soft, wet, repetitive, coming from the base of your bed, which, to be fair, is just a nest of straw pretending to be furniture. You lift your head slowly. The rats are back, but something's different. They're not scurrying or darting or sniffing cautiously like before. No, they're settled, comfortable, and they're chewing. On your toe, you yelp. Sit bolt upright and yank your foot back. The rats scatter like thieves. Buttercup giving you a look that says, well, if you weren't using it. Hugh raises an eyebrow. They gone bold on you? They tasted me. He shrugs. Take it as a compliment, means you're still warm. You inspect your foot. No broken skin, thank the saints, but definitely some teeth marks in the grime. Your toe has officially become part of the buffet. A milestone, perhaps. Not one you ever aspired to reach. Do they do that often? Hugh leans back, hands behind his head. Depends. You move too much, they back off. You lie too still, they wonder if it's buffet time. So I can't sleep too soundly or too lightly. Exactly. You sigh and prop your back against the wall again, wiggling your toes like you're trying to signal still alive. Please don't snack. Buttercup watches, unimpressed. Now, rat infestations in medieval prisons were not just common. They were practically an expectation. Jails often doubled as makeshift sewers, with no real waste system, and a near-constant supply of food scraps, blood, and warm human bodies. Rats were less unwanted guests, and more permanent residents with squatters' rights. In some prisons, rats were so numerous that guards used them as a kind of punishment. Throw a man in a dark, rat-heavy cell, wait an hour, and listen to the screams. It saved on rope and creativity. Some cities even had rat pits, where rats were bred and later used for entertainment or intimidation. One record from 14th century Frankfurt mentions a merchant charged with inciting rodents during a tavern brawl. What that means is lost to history, probably for the best. Your stomach twists, not from the rats. From hunger? Again. The peach was a memory. The porridge. Ancient history. You wonder what it would take to steal an extra crust. Maybe a bribe? A favor? A particularly good rat impression? You look at Buttercup? Nope. Too dignified. The cell door rattles. Your heart stutters. But it's not the jailer. It's a boy. A young boy. He's maybe 12, scrawny, hair a dirty tangle, eyes wide and wild like a squirrel caught mid-theft. He's outside your cell, holding a broom like a sword, and staring through the bars with open fascination. You the one what boiled, he whispers. You nod slowly. Did it hurt? You raise your bandaged hand. He winces. Cool, he says, with all the empathy of someone who's never known consequence. What are you doing here, you ask? I clean, he says, tapping the broom. And listen. To what? Everything. Then he grins, wide, gap-toothed, and leans closer. You know what they're doing tonight? You shake your head. He looks over his shoulder, makes sure the coast is clear. They're bringing her up. You blink. Who? He drops his voice to a reverent whisper. Martha. Oh no. Even Hugh sits up straighter. The boy nods solemnly. She's been in the deep cells 4 years. No one's lasted more than a week down there. She talks to bones, and they answer. Why's she coming up? Because she asked to. Then, with the dramatic flair of a street performer, he spins and disappears down the corridor, his broom tapping like a drum roll. You and Hugh exchange a look. You believe that, you murmur? He shrugs. I don't not believe it. The cell feels colder now. The shadows cling tighter. Even Buttercup backs into the straw. And all you can think is, if the rats were bold today, what will they be when Martha arrives? You lie awake. Sleep is no longer on speaking terms with you. Every creak in the corridor, every shuffle of straw, every scurry of paws along the beam overhead, it all makes your eyes snap open like they've got hinges rusted in fear. You've been trying to dismiss it. Martha. Just a name, just a story. One of those things whispered by half-mad inmates and over-imaginative cleaning boys. But now, as the torchlight shifts strangely in the corridor and the rats have vanished without a goodbye, you start to wonder. Maybe Martha's real. Hugh hasn't spoken in hours. He's awake too. You can hear it in his breathing. Shallow, controlled, like someone pretending they're asleep. Because if they acknowledge the noise might answer. And then you hear it. Not footsteps, not the jailer's usual tromp. This is lighter, slower, almost a glide. It stops and outside your cell. You don't move. Then, a whisper. Why aren't you sleeping? The voice is female, dry measured, as if reading from the margins of a burned prayer book. You don't answer. You don't even breathe. Your brain goes still, like a candle snuffed out in a storm. I asked, the voice says again, why you aren't sleeping. She doesn't look in. Or if she does, you can't see her. All you catch is a flicker of movement. A robe, maybe, or long hair. Then the whisper of retreating fabric. Hugh exhales so hard it startles you. That, he whispers, was her. I thought she wasn't real. Oh, she's real. The torchlight outside flickers again, then vanishes. She's moved on. Silence reclaims the corridor. But it's a charged silence now, thick with tension. You lie back down slowly, eyes still locked on the doorway, expecting another whisper, another shape, but nothing comes. But the whispering, though, does return. Not from her, from the walls. You thought it was imagination before. You thought it was the drip playing tricks. But now, as you listen, you realize the sounds have rhythm, pattern, like a conversation, faint, garbled, a mix of languages, snatches of Latin, Old French, a cough that might have been a word. Then, clear as bells in fog, she shouldn't be up here. You sit up, so does Hugh. Did you hear that? He nods, face pale in the dim. She doesn't leave the deep cells, he mutters. Not unless they ask her to do something. Like what? He shakes his head. Last time she came up, 2 guards quit. One tried to throw himself in the moat. They said she saw things in them, made them see it too. Like a witch? No, Hugh says slowly. Witches are easy to explain. Martha's just wrong. Here's a scholarly debate for your nerves. There's no confirmed historical figure named Martha haunting medieval prison records. But there are stories. Common names, women imprisoned without trial, accused of heresy or madness, or simply being inconvenient. One 13th century manuscript describes a woman in gray who spoke in every tongue and none, and lived without food. Likely exaggeration, or was it? You lie back again, one arm draped across your eyes, not to sleep, but to block out the faint shimmer that seems to hover at the edge of your vision. You're not sure if it's light or thought or fear. The rats haven't returned. That alone is a problem. Buttercup never skips a night. You whisper her name. Nothing. Even Hugh looks troubled. You think she scared them off, you murmur. She doesn't have to scare them, he says. They just know. The whispering in the wall grows fainter now. Further away. Maybe it's moving. Maybe it's just the cell breathing again. You try to settle. But every small sound is a trigger. Every rustle a possibility. Every creak a potential return. Still, you remind yourself of something solid. Your bandaged hand, still tender, still sore. That pain is real. That means you're real. And that means you can make it through the night. You hope, eventually, exhaustion wraps around your shoulders like a blanket woven from anxiety and fatigue. Your limbs grow heavy. Your thoughts slow. The last thing you hear, a rat. Just one. Quiet feet on stone, a familiar shape. Buttercup slipping back into the room like she never left. She curls near your knee. And with that, finally, sleep comes. But you dream of whispering. You wake to screaming. It's not the desperate, echoing howl of someone being dragged to trial, or the muffled groans you've grown used to from the next cell over. No, this is high-pitched, sudden, and far too close. It slices through the damp air like a dagger through moldy butter. You sit up, heart slamming against your ribs, eyes wild and unfocused. Hugh is already on his feet, or as close to standing as the ankle chain allows. He's peering through the bars, his face set, jaw clenched. "What is it?" you whisper. He doesn't answer. You crawl forward, ignoring the sharp protest of your hand, and press your face against the iron. That's when you hear it, a sound from above. Not within the jail, not down the corridor, but outside. Cheers and drums. Not the festive kind, not music, rhythm. Heavy, brutal, repetitive. You turn to Hugh. "They're doing a punishment round," he says flatly. "A what? A display? For the town? Parade a few condemned through the square. Public justice. Keeps the crowd happy. Reminds them who's in charge." The screaming resumes, then cuts short again. You can't see what's happening, but your imagination fills in the gaps with a little too much enthusiasm. Historians describe these events as a kind of grim theater. Part justice, part deterrent, part twisted entertainment. Stocks, pillories, floggings, even mock executions. And of course the real thing too. The punishment parade, all as it was sometimes known, wasn't always about death. It was about display. You were meant to be seen suffering. The priest, of course, would be there, offering last rites, or spiritual commentary, or just watching. "Ever been in one?" you ask Hugh. He nods slowly. "Twice. First time I got flogged. Second time I pretended to faint. They dragged me back in. Said I wasn't dramatic enough." A roar erupts outside, laughter this time. A different kind of screaming. Joyful. Spectator joy. A crowd enjoying the spectacle. You back away from the bars. The corridor feels narrower today. The air heavier. Like the weight of the whole town's curiosity is pressing down through the stone. Hugh flops onto his straw with a grunt. "If we're lucky," he mutters, "they'll forget we're down here." You sit against the wall, your burned hand throbbing in time with the beat of the drums above. They're using the heavy sticks today. You wonder if it's raining. If anyone in the crowd brought an apple. If some kid is watching the parade and wondering if they'll ever get to see you scream. You want to say that thought is absurd, but it's not. You hear chains drag across the corridor. Someone's being brought back. Someone who didn't make the crowd cheer enough to keep them. A door slams. A sob follows, then silence. The rats stay hidden, even Buttercup. You think of the last time you were outdoors. Real sun, real grass. A breeze that didn't smell like mildew and anxiety. You remember walking without being yanked by iron. You remember not being meat on a display cart. You think, you ask quietly, they'll do that to me? Hugh is quiet for a long time. Then, only if you look good in rope. You try to laugh. It comes out shaky. A torch flickers outside. The light changes again. Shadows stretch across the bars like fingers. You notice one looks like a noose. You close your eyes. The cheering above rises to a crescendo, then cut off, as if a curtain dropped, as if someone decided the show is over. What's worse is the quiet that follows. No more screams, no more cheering. Just stone, just drip, just you. You sit there, unable to move, unsure if the worst has passed, or if it's only just made room for something worse. And from somewhere above, faint but unmistakable, comes the tolling of a bell. One chime, another, a third. You lose count after that, but you hear every single one. There's something new in the drip. It takes you a while to notice. Maybe because your ears are still ringing from the echo of the bells. Maybe because your thoughts keep circling back to that scream. The first one. The raw, hopeless kind that makes your spine twitch and your breath catch. But then the drip lands on your neck. It's warm. You reach up slowly, fingers brushing the skin just below your ear. The droplet smears. Sticky. Not water. You look up. The ceiling is as grim and craggy as ever. But now, just above where the stones meet, something glistens in the torchlight. Red. You jerk away. Something's wrong, you murmur. Hugh stirs. Only now? No, you say. I mean really wrong. The drip. He leans over, frowning. Well, that's new. There's a pause. Then, don't taste it. You hadn't planned to, but thanks, Hugh. Here's the thing. Blood dripping from a dungeon ceiling isn't unheard of in medieval lore. But in actual, factual, boring old history, it usually meant one of two things. Someone died in the cell above you, or the ceiling wasn't entirely watertight and mixed with an unfortunate overflow from the execution platform. Neither option is appealing. You scoot your straw mat. The drip follows. It seems to prefer you. Hugh watches it like it might blink. I had a cellmate once, he says, who said the stones bleed when they've seen too much. That's comforting. He wasn't. You stand. More a slow, hunched rise, and edge toward the door. There's no real safety in the corridor, but at least it doesn't drip on you out there. You grip the bars, peer into the gloom. The torches are dimmer today, or maybe the shadows are brighter. Either way, the light feels distant, like it's trying not to touch anything. The jailer hasn't been by. No breakfast, no threats, no passing glance. Just emptiness. And your cell whispering through water. There's a soft tap behind you. You whirl. It's the bone cross. It fell from its place beside the straw, even though you haven't touched it in hours. You stoop to pick it up. It's cracked, hairline, right through the middle. You're not superstitious, but still, you set it gently on the ground again, facing away from you. Maybe he was right, you say. Who? Hugh asks. The priest? Maybe this is a cleansing. Hugh chuckles, dry and slow. Cleansing implies improvement. You sit back down, curling away from the drip's reach. You watch the torchlight flicker across the wall. The same shadows dancing, but now feeling a touch. Off. Slightly too slow, slightly out of sync. Out of... You ever see the deep cells? You ask. He nods slowly. Years ago. Got tossed down there for disruptive reflection. You mean sarcasm? I questioned the scribe's spelling. Apparently that's heresy. What were they like? Quiet, he says, but not silent, the kind of quiet that listens. You feel the air shift. Not breeze, just pressure. As if the dungeon is holding its breath. Is Martha from there? Sir. Was, Hugh says. Now, I think she is the deep cells. You stare at him. I mean it, he continues. They put her down there because she made the guards. See things, feel things. Their own guilt, maybe. Their own lies, maybe just their hunger. And when they came out, they weren't guards anymore. You close your eyes. You don't want to believe it, but you also don't want to go down there. You hear a creak in the corridor. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps. Not the jailers, not the priests. Bare feet. You don't move. You barely breathe. The steps pause outside your cell. You feel it, someone there. Not looking in, just standing, waiting. Then, a whisper. Have you confessed yet? The voice is familiar, but it's not hers. It's the boy. You blink, you move to the bars. He's standing there, broom in hand, barefoot, eyes too wide. You need to confess, he says. To who? To her, he whispers. Then he points to the ceiling and walks away. You're not sure if he means Martha, or the dungeon itself, or the drip. The night drips in slowly, like a spilled jar of molasses. You lose track of time. Again. The torches outside have burned low, casting long, uncertain shadows across your cell that shift when you're not looking and seem to linger when you are. The air tastes different now, like iron, like soot, like something ancient has stirred. Hugh hasn't spoken in an hour. He lies on his mat with one hand behind his head and the other resting gently on Buttercup, who's curled into his ribs like a tiny, loyal furnace. They both look too still. You don't ask if he's asleep. You don't want to know. Your burned hand pulses. The bandage is loose now, slick with something you choose not to inspect too closely. The peach from earlier seems like a dream from another life, something that happened to someone else, someone who believed things might improve. The whispering returns, not from the wall this time. From the corridor, you rise quietly and inch toward the bars. The footsteps you heard earlier are back, soft, bare, and getting closer. Then you see her, Martha, not a ghost, not a myth, just a woman. And yet, her hair is matted, long, tangled with twine, and what might be flowers or bones, it's hard to tell. Her skin is pale, but not sickly. Just drained, as if the color left long ago and never returned. She wears no shoes, her robe hangs in tatters, gray on gray, and she hums something tuneless as she walks. She stops outside your cell and looks in, not at you, in, like she's reading your bones. You try to speak, nothing comes out. She raises one finger to her lips, a silent request, or a command. Then she smiles. It's not cruel, not even kind. It's the smile of someone who knows a truth you never will, and who pities you for that. And then, just as suddenly, she's gone. Down the corridor, past Hugh's cell. Her humming fades like candle smoke, until all that's left is your own heartbeat, loud, clumsy, and very, very mortal. You back away from the bars, legs trembling. You curl up on your mat, clutching your good hand to your chest, the other throbbing like it's trying to crawl away. You don't sleep. Not really. You just drift, suspended somewhere between fatigue and fear. And then you hear it. Footsteps. Heavy, jingling. The jailer. He's back. You don't know how long he's been gone, but now you hear his keys before you see him. Then he's there, framed in the flickering torchlight. His eyes meet yours. He unlocks your door. He steps in. He doesn't speak. Behind him, two others appear. One is the scribe, looking sleepy. The other, a guard you haven't seen before, with a scar down his cheek like a strike of lightning. The jailer nods. It's time. You rise. You don't remember standing. You don't remember anything between the mat and the doorway. Hugh is sitting up now, watching. He gives you a slow nod. Keep your chin up, he says. Why? They hate when you look defiant. You almost laugh. Almost. The jailer grabs your arm. Not roughly, just firmly, finally. And you're led out of the cell into the corridor toward whatever waits in the darkness beyond the stairs. Maybe it's judgment. Maybe it's mercy. Maybe it's just another drip. But whatever it is, you don't flinch. And now, as the last torch flickers low and the heavy door swings shut once more, we leave the dungeon behind. The sounds of the prison fade. Soft footsteps. The gentle scurry of rats returning to their corners. The whisper of water falling from a forgotten crack above. Even Martha, that quiet sentinel of the deep cells, slips back into silence. You, dear listener, are safe again. The stone beneath your spine becomes your mattress. The echo of keys becomes the whir of a fan. The rustle of straw fades into your pillow. And the distant drums are just your own breath, steady and slow. Let the tension unravel. Let your jaw unclench. Let the images of dim corridors and glistening chains dissolve into mist. No more jailers, no more shadows, no more judgments to come. Just you, wrapped in warmth, afloat in quiet. The night holds you gently now. And if you hear a drip, it's only the faucet in the next room, nothing more. No eyes in the dark, no whisper behind the wall, just dreams, waiting patiently to take you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. You're free to drift. Good night, sweet dreams.